All right, a lot to get to here on the Red, Gold, and Bold podcast as the Kansas City Chiefs are once again back in the Super Bowl. That's right, back to the Super Bowl for the Kansas City Chiefs. We will talk about it. Which do we put more into? Is it the Kansas City Chiefs or was it the Bengals? Who was a bigger impact on this game? Was Mahomes? Was this his best game ever? What's his legacy after this? What's Andy Reid's legacy? Chris Jones, his performance is it second to none in his career. Can the defense be trusted? Brett Veach, is he getting his fair due? Was there problems with the officiating? Certainly national people think so. What's your level of concern for the injuries with the Chiefs? Philly, a 1.5-point favorite to the odds makers have it right. Early predictions for the game, early thoughts on the games. We do it next here on the Red Gold and Bold podcast.
This is the Red, Gold, and Bold podcast, the most in-depth analysis of the Kansas City Chiefs, breaking down the Chiefs like no one else can. Red, Gold, and Bold is hosted by Jeff Chadiha, Eric Eager, and Soren Petro. Jeff is a senior columnist and on-air personality for the NFL Network and NFL.com. Eric is the Senior VP of Research and Development for Sumer Sports. Soren Petro is the host of the program on Sports Radio 810 WHB in Kansas City. Red, Gold, and Bold podcast is proudly brought to you by Can Asphalt and Concrete, Kansas City's nationally recognized full-service paving and pavement maintenance contractor, making parking lot problems disappear in Kansas City since 1994. Free consultations, no commissions, in-house crews, and every project comes with a written warranty. Find them online at ganasphalt.com or call 816-484-3338. Gan Asphalt and Concrete. One contractor, all things parking lot. Now, here are your hosts, Jeff Chadiha, Eric Eager, and Soren Petro.
Hey, good evening and welcome. If you're catching us via the podcast later in the week, remember you can catch us streaming live. We do it each and every Tuesday night at 9 p.m. Central, talking Kansas City Chiefs. Eric, I believe you dubbed it the best Kansas City Chiefs podcast out there. We're going to go with it. It's a model we like. Enjoy. We're going to try to wear it on the Chiefs.
You got to give Curtis a little bit more money. Throw that in there to the at the intro. And I paid for some drinks for the big guy the other night. I mean, you guys got to get him. You know, I feel like you can add that.
Do you really think? What'd you do? Pick up his Coke? Is that what happened there on that deal? You know, he's a cheap date. If you're picking up Curtis's drinks, I will tell you that much.
Yeah, I mean, look, the Chiefs got to the Super Bowl this year by being fiscally responsible. I get to better intros for this show by being fiscally responsible.
This feels very Bangladesh, what he's doing right now.
Here we go. So let's start right there. Jeff wants to dive right into it. When you suggested the topic, more about the Chiefs or more about the Bengals, I think I had a feeling for where you're going to go, but remove all mystery for me and tell me, which was it? More about the Chiefs or more about the Bengals?
It was the Chiefs. You thought I was going to go Bengals?
I did. I'm not going to lie.
I know Eric seems to think the game was on the verge of a blowout, which he can get into when he gets his chance to talk. But it was – you asked me last week, what does the Chiefs win look like? And what did I say? The defense has to dominate. They got to get turnovers. And I think I said they have to, run the ball effectively. They didn't do that. Or I said maybe Mahomes has to play out of his mind. Mahomes has to play well. And so those three things happened. And so that was the recipe, and they got it. I mean, end of the day, I said this on the radio earlier today. I said they had to get a contribution from almost everybody who played in that game to win this game. As much as we'll talk about Mahomes and the way he played, they won the game because of their defense. They were able to get Joe Burrow on the ground. They got 2 turnovers, 2 interceptions. They had 5 or 6 rookies playing at one point. That is the kind of stuff that you need to have in a game like this. I mean, obviously the offside penalty was a huge killer for the Bengals, but you have to applaud the fact that the quarterback got out there and played at a high level with the kind of injury that usually sidelines people for at least a month. MBS showed up. He's been a guy who hasn't been consistent this year. The defense that people didn't trust for a lot of reasons, showed up. And so, you have to applaud them for it. I mean, they won that game because they willed themselves to it. I think a lot of things could have happened to help the Bengals win, but the Chiefs did their part.
Yeah. I think Well, Eric, what do you think? Listen, Chiefs or Bengals? Which one was this more about?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was about the Chiefs, right? I mean, Jeff, everything Jeff said was correct. I mean, this is a team that, I tweeted this out a month ago. I said, like, look, the great teams in the NFL, they use the regular season to play through their weaknesses, and the not so great teams in the NFL use the regular season to hide them. And I think we look back and we look at 4 rookie defensive backs playing a lot of the season, right? And, thick and thin, right? Josh Williams got banged up a bit against Buffalo. We all talked about that. Jalen Watson was in the lineup for the pick 6 of the Chargers, got benched for Joshua Williams, then got back into the lineup, right? Brian Cook. Brian Cook had a terrible game Sunday, other than the play that he made on the interception. George Karlaftis, first half of the year, wasn't, struggled a little bit, actually lost snaps to Michael Dana, comes back, has had, a very, very good second half of the season. And, on the offensive side of the ball, obviously MVS played wonderfully on Sunday. He had to, right? It was a situation where, you saw that like bubble screen motion that he ran that was clearly a Juju Smith-Schuster play that he had to come in and run. Has he played well all year? No, but they kind of stuck with him and they kept throwing him the ball and kind of, showing. And, I think, this is a team that if they didn't have the quarterback that they had and they didn't have the head coach that they had, they would be less willing to play the players that are going to be needed later in the year and go through the lumps. When you have a guy like Mahomes and you have a guy like Reed, you can play those games against teams like Houston, against Denver, and guys like us are kind of like, oh crap, they don't cover the spread or they're not that successful. But then you get to a game like this where you have 3 rookie corners playing against Joe Burrow and 2 elite wide receivers, and it's like those guys aren't rookies anymore, right? When you went back to 2018, when Charvarius Ward was playing in the playoffs, he was a rookie because they didn't play him the whole season, and he played out of necessity because the other guys sucked. And so I think that, and obviously I was optimistic when I picked Chiefs Eagles in both directions. But for me, what I saw was this is a team that, was built to be resilient with respect to these things. And so Sunday was about resiliency of the roster, which goes all the way back to March 24th when they traded Tyreek Hill and said, we are going to spread the risk out across this roster. And they spread it out in a bunch of different places. I mean, it was a very good game for the Brett Veach regime. It was a very good game for Andy Reid, and it was a very good game for Patrick Mahomes, because this was the game that showed why those guys are so important to this club and why the reason they built this team was a winning reason to, winning way to build this team for the long term. And yeah, it was about them. The Bengals are a great football team, and they took advantage of a lot of the stuff that kind of kept them into the game. And when Burrow had the ball to end the game, I was scared shitless, right? But ultimately, it ended up being okay.
Gonna use it early, huh? Gonna let it fly early. Opening topic. There it goes.
I mean, it was. Look, I won't use another one, but it was worth using, I think.
Yeah. By the way, it did take me for folks watching about 2 or 3 minutes to actually see that Eric, instead of his name, had put in right about the Chiefs, which I have to say bravo to that one. Well done. Listen, it was for sure a total team win. I mean, I think that's the one thing. Jeff, and listen, I think we all thought this game was going to be kind of close. I think I picked Bengals early, late in the week. Once I saw Mahomes play, I was picking Chiefs beforehand. I think on this podcast, I don't even remember. Did I pick the Bengals? On this?
2 of us thought it was going to be close. The guy who's right about the Chiefs did not think it was going to be.
The Chiefs dominated that game.
Let's make it.
The Chiefs everybody's going to talk about the officiating, but the Chiefs dominated that game. They held the Bengals to 71 yards rushing, 238 yards passing, 4.9 yards per play. They kicked the hell out of the Bengals. They let the Bengals back into the game by some random stuff like Kadarius Toney dropping a touchdown and Isaiah Pacheco's touchdown getting a holding call on it and all this kind of nonsense. But make no mistake, the Chiefs were the better team in that game. And the person that picked the Chiefs blowout was more right than the person that picked the Bengals to win that game. No doubt. The Chiefs were better than the Bengals. And it was only because A, the Bengals are a great team and they were able to take advantage of being left in that game. And B, the Chiefs let them back in the game by some BS and the fact that they had their top 3 receivers and their best defensive back injured. That, like, I'm sorry, I'm a little bit.
I don't think anybody listening to this is buying that, and I know Soren. Look on Soren's face is he's not buying it. And Soren calls blowouts all the time.
All the time. I call for blowouts.
So if they score after the Jalen Watson interception and salt away the half and get the ball to start the second half up 20-3, what are we talking about, boys?
It didn't happen though.
What
we're talking about, it didn't happen.
I'm just waiting for the freight train to maybe slow up a little bit before I try to get in front of it. The freight train being you, Eric. Listen, I don't subscribe at all to anything about the refs being on, helping out the Chiefs. Not at all. I don't. I hear a bunch of national folks, basically working backwards and trying to fix why their prediction of the Bengals winning didn't work. That's what I hear there. Some of the stuff, like I was watching on ESPN Get Ups, trying to claim there's a clip on the Sky Moore punt return when Darius Harris comes down and puts his hands up like this and is standing behind the guy, and he takes a dive, clearly trying to draw the clip, the alleged hold on Orlando Brown. There are penalties on the Chiefs that weren't called. There are lots of holds that weren't called. They happen all the time in the game, but the ones that they've zeroed in on are farcical. So I don't subscribe to that, but I am more with Jeff. I mean, I think you can always work backwards and fix every mistake you had and say, well, if we do everything perfect, look, we can add 13, 17 more points. This wasn't one of those where it was like the Kadarius Toney drop. It's not a drop in my book. I
remember that.
I mean, he had guys all over him. He almost brought it down. I think acting like Kadarius Toney just flubbed one is unfair. The Bengals had coverage on that. If you do that, then I can't subscribe to that. The Chiefs are the better team. Yeah, I can subscribe to that. I'm good with that. That right now,
to have picked the Bengals in the again, I'm not saying that I'm correct in saying that it was going to be a blowout. I've obviously took the fattest, the thinnest part of the tail there, but to pick the Bengals in Arrowhead against the Chiefs means that the Bengals are a much better team because you have to overcome home field advantage and the fact that the quarterback, even Mahomes, is better than Burrow. Even
Eric, nobody knew what his ankle was going to be when that game started. It's not like people just said, "Oh,
I'm pretty sure that I gave a decent range of outcomes last Tuesday to how his ankle would be." Right?
We didn't know if he could walk. He wasn't practicing all week. I just don't buy the idea that picking the Bengals was some lark or some wild.
It wasn't. It's not a lark. And in fact, I agree with you. I just think this
clearly wasn't a lark. It was. They've won 3 in a row. All right, so I had won 3 in a row.
Yeah.
But the other narrative was true too. Listen, these teams have played 4 times and the Bengals have won 3 times. All 4 games have been decided by 3 points. Played 10 times. What do I think it is? 5-5. I mean, I think these are 2 incredibly balanced teams. And on this day, and listen, in some ways, the way the Bengals were trash talking all over the place, like every motivational thing that you could possibly have was on the Chiefs side. I'll make you a case that you maybe you're disappointed the Chiefs didn't win by more, right? Like, not that they should have. Yeah, but you're creating the scenario that they should have. The Bengals were there where they should be. That game came down the way it should come down. And by the way, they don't have to win by 13. You're pissing and moaning about your prediction, right? Not about
I'm happy. I'm happy because ultimately my prediction was based upon the fact that I thought the Chiefs were a standard deviation better than the Bengals, and they are. That is, it was basically the same game as the first matchup where the Bengals outplayed the Chiefs substantially, and there were a couple, the Carlos Dunlap stop and the Tyler Boyd drop touchdown and all this stuff kept the Chiefs in the game, and the result looked closer than it should have been. And this was a game that and the Bengals, like I said, when the Bengals got the ball back after the punt, the Bengals probably should have won. They were probably favored live, and if they would have won, I think the discussion today would have been the Chiefs lost another game when they were the better team. And that I feel like that's something where now we look at the Super Bowl that's coming up, and granted, the Eagles are great, and I actually don't have a problem with the Eagles being favored in this game. But like, I think that we're underestimating them still. And I think that this team, on Sunday displayed, best in class AFC performance. And there were a couple random things that kept the Bengals in the game. And I want that to, kind of be, I want that truth to be
Why were you scared? Why were you scared that when Burrow had the ball, the Chiefs were that much better and just should have even been in a game that close? I mean, the whole point of this, and look, I know people feel like I don't like the Chiefs, which is ridiculous. The whole point of this is that, as Soren said, these are two very equal teams. And that game could have broke either way. If it went to overtime, it could have been a whole different situation. I mean, if I don't buy the idea that Butker's walking out there, kicking a 60-yard field goal without that penalty and winning in regulation. And so if it's an overtime, they might be having a whole different conversation right now.
I do grant you, Jeff, that if the Chiefs, 3 of their top 4 wide receivers go down with injuries and their best defensive player goes down with an injury, and their quarterback.
The Bengals walked in without 3 starting linemen. Do we forget that?
No, we're not forgetting that. But I agree. But I'm saying that, yeah, at the time the Chiefs were down bad because they lost players, right? And
I don't want to do this all night. So let me ask you this, Eric. Let's just leave it at this, because come on, you're a mathematician, right? Allegedly. The way I'm hearing you talk right now, I'm going to throw that out there.
Hold on. What's the allegedly part?
I just think
talking about the results, I'm talking about the process.
Let me ask the question, and maybe you'll get to the bottom of it. Do you really think that this game, the Chiefs play this game against the Bengals, they win 10 out of 10?
No, I think if the Chiefs and Bengals played, the Chiefs would win 6 to 7 out of 10 games. In this game,
so they win the next 7 games or the next 6 games.
No, 6 or 7 out of 10 games. The Chiefs.
He's saying if we started with 10 right now, Jeff. Yeah.
If we started from now, and the Chiefs and Bengals play 10, or even if you take the average of the last 2 years, take those rosters, re-rack, run again. I think the Chiefs, like I said, the Chiefs should win 6.5 of those 10 games. Yes.
But what is that based on?
The fact that they're better, and they were
they played 4 times. The Chiefs have won 1 game.
Listen, I won't hate on
claim.
I won't. But we're talking about here moving forward. Because listen, we can play the game about woulda, coulda, shoulda, and I think the woulda, coulda, shouldas are more on the Chiefs than the losses. I don't think they're I don't think there's woulda, coulda, shouldas here. That means the Chiefs should have won by more. But I think these games have kind of gone the way they should, and you got to make plays. And I think the more important part for the Chiefs would be to examine why they were losing the close ones. And this time I think they, took care of some of that. Although I'll say this, they punted the ball back. It was a 4th and 8, not a 4th and 5, but inside the Bengals 40, they punted back. Now, I don't mind it because I think this game was different from the other ones. The Chiefs defense was better. The Bengals offensive line wasn't as good as it was the first time they played. The Chiefs defense was doing a better job of getting stops. So for all those reasons, one of the touchdowns was set up by a Patrick Mahomes where the ball, because of the cold, and of course, if you remember draft day, his tiny hands, the ball slipped out. The Bengals got it. That brought him in there. I'm okay. The Chiefs won this game. I think they should have won this game. I think they were supposed to win this game. They didn't steal this game. But it was what it was, and that's what happens when 2 evenly matched teams play. The Chiefs' defensive line has been good this year, been getting better all along. The Bengals had injuries at a spot that it really hurt. But I'm going to tell you, I mean, if you were sitting there watching, they lined up one time, and at wideout was Jody Fortson, Marcus Kemp, and Noah Gray. And if a little P didn't come out when you saw that lineup, then you don't know football.
I was like,
it looked like a bridge, to quote Jeff, it looked like a bridge too far. When I saw that, I'm like, I don't know that this lineup can get there. And that's why I will say this was Mahomes' best game ever, because he was not locked and loaded with everybody out there. He was not healthy, and the offensive line still has questions.
That's why you play
defense played great.
That's why you play defense. That's
why
right. I say the defense won this game.
I know what the numbers say when that, for a couple things. So my friend that was sitting next to me heard me say no fewer than a dozen times.
Dave has a name, by the way. Dave has a name.
Yeah.
We broke bread with him. Or at least you shoveled fries in your face with him.
Great. Whoa. I feel like being right about the Chiefs would warrant a little bit more respect on this show. But hey, look, So, yeah, I mean, I turned to my friend Dave and I said no fewer than a dozen times, what the hell is Marcus Kemp doing out there? And then I realized everybody was injured. And like, I got the things on my watch. And I was like, okay, so they really do have to roll with Sky Moore, MarquezValdes-Scantling, and Marcus Kemp. Now, the other part was
what, a quarter we're talking, right?
no, Juju didn't play the second half of the game. Neither, and Kadarius Toney broke his own ankle.
Got hurt like in the second half.
Whenever it was, they were dropping like flies.
Yeah. The whole point is they weren't playing the whole game without these guys.
Brad said something about my hair here. We gotta throw that out there too. Give me my flowers a little bit. But all those receivers were hurt in the first half. I mean, Kadarius Toney like broke his own ankle. McCole Hardman gave it a shot, didn't work. I mean, we were talking again. Sky Moore's returning punts at the end of the game, and like, I mean, you guys probably, and I did too. I thought he was going to muff that punt, and that was how the Bengals were going to win, as opposed to running it back to midfield. I mean, there was a number of variance things that happened both sides, but I think if you look at this team, much more resilient here. I think the Bengals ran out of gas as well. Like they didn't have a second hand to stop the Chiefs.
Yeah.
Let's move on to the next. We're going to agree to disagree on this one. I don't think this game was a referendum on the Chiefs being better. They played 4 games in a 13-month span. Chiefs won. We can move on to the next topic.
And the 2 most important ones, they split. The AFC Championship games were split. So I think it's going to be a war for a long time to come. I always take Patrick Mahomes, a healthy Patrick Mahomes. This wasn't even healthy Patrick Mahomes. If you want to say the Chiefs are better than what you point to is number 15. And an emerging defense. A lot of young players on defense. How about it? I say this is Mahomes' best game ever. Jeff, do you?
I think it is. When you look at the context, the injury he was playing with, the receivers that he lost, what was on the line. Certainly the best playoff game he's ever had. But I just think the leadership, the will he showed, I have to imagine he'll probably never acknowledge how much pain he was in, because obviously in the second half you saw him hopping around a few times out there, and he tweaked it when he dropped the football and that fumble play. But my God, I mean, you've seen him do amazing things in his career. Like I've never, aside from maybe Terrell Owens playing on a broken leg or playing after 6 weeks after a broken leg in the Super Bowl, I haven't seen anybody do that ever. And so, I have to, he's had better numbers, he's had bigger games, but what was on the line against a team that has had this team's number three games in a row, I would definitely say it was the best he's ever played.
Where would you put it, Eric?
Yeah, this was a really good game. I mean, we've been down on Valdes-Scantling all year. We've been down on Sky Moore all year. And I think rightfully so. I think up until this game, both guys, I think there's part of it was they failed to produce because other guys were healthy and they were kind of part of a group. And so when you opened up different parts of the offense to a guy like MBS, or you open up different parts of the offense to guys like Sky Moore, they can produce more. And, I think that was part of the story, but the other part was those guys didn't produce. And so, if you would have said pre-game, look, your wide receivers today are Sky Moore, MBS, and Marcus Kemp, I think all of us would have said, okay, this is like the Bucs Super Bowl all over again. So the fact that he was able to, in the second half, move the offense and get the necessary points, that was great. And I think Mahomes was, he did a really good job of avoiding, pressure, and, he did a really good job of avoiding turnovers and stuff like that, other than the weird play with the fumble. And, I think he's a complete psycho for trying to run the ball with one leg. And ultimately he showed kind of, everything that we've all thought about Mahomes, which is that he wants to win Super Bowls and he wants to bring championships to Kansas City. And that run was, again, like at the game, I'm like, I was dumbfounded that he was running that ball. And because you had seen earlier in the game with the one time he rolled left and looked really bad. And there was another play where he got up and it looked really bad. And to be able to do that and to gut that one out and was a tremendous performance. And I think Obviously his defense helped him out a lot, but this was, to me, I think the gutsiest performance of his career for sure.
Yeah, I've seen a couple of people mentioning about like the wide receivers. Well, Burrow had to deal with the Chiefs wide receivers, but he didn't, right? That's why it's a team game. It's why you manage your cap your way, you take your draft picks. The Bengals are those three receivers now, and they weren't as good when they lost the third one when Tyler Boyd went down. I mean, and that's what we're saying. That's the point. We're giving the love to Mahomes right here. This was it. Guys dropping all around him already hurt. This was fantastic, but he still didn't get there alone. That I think we all agree.
Yeah, that's what we're saying. Yeah.
This was the organization's best day. MarquezValdes-Scantling showed up at absolutely the right time for this team and made plays when he needed to make plays. Yes, Mahomes was dropping in. We asked the question, what's the legacy here from Mahomes? And I think the legacy of this game is like the conversations I heard last week of some people, there was a lot of, there's some folks on your network, Jeff, that were saying, hey, Burrow wins this game. It's over. He's the better quarterback. Listen, this will continue to be contested for years to come. And I think it's going to get harder for Josh Allen and Joe Burrow, because Josh Allen goes from 17 to 37, $36 million against the cap next year. Joe Burrow is going to get a contract extension a year or two from now. He's going to get really expensive. It's going to get harder to keep all that talent around there. That's the legacy part of this game. That's what was happening in my mind, Jeff, is that the Chiefs are now into the expensive quarterback stage, and they didn't have to see Buffalo. The Bengals took out Buffalo, and then they dusted the Bengals. The Bengals really needed to grab this opportunity. This does a lot for his legacy, going to his third Super Bowl. If he wins it, that's going to be 2 championships at the age of 27. It's going to put him way past Josh Allen and Joe. They're not just one good run away from being all even on jewelry if he grabs this next one.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think his legacy was set before this game was ever played. And so I never bought into that narrative that this was some kind of referendum on his place in history. I think, as I said last week, there's a lot of time for all this stuff to be figured out. And I know that we want to decide right now how things are going to be for the next 15 years. And again, I made the comparison to Tom Brady and Peyton Manning when they were playing early in their careers. And nobody was talking about Tom Brady being the best quarterback in the history of the game when he was in year 4, year 5. And so I always say, like, Patrick Mahomes is an amazing player. And maybe, and I get it. Like, we're in Kansas City. I know people watching this are Chiefs fans. So I understand the history here, the desire to have a quarterback like this. I've been lucky enough to be around a ton of great quarterbacks throughout my career, guys who've done great things. So I'm not as blown away by it as people in this town are who've always wished for this. And so I totally get that. And it doesn't mean I don't appreciate Mahomes in any way. But yeah, I think that his place is safe. He's a first ballot Hall of Famer already. He didn't need a win in this game or a loss in this game to change any of that. But I also believe that Joe Burrow, Josh Allen are playing with great talents. They have organizations who have shown they will make good moves with people around them. And when they're in a place that Mahomes is in right now, when they're more expensive, I fully expect their teams to have good young players around them. And for this to be decided at some point, and I always say this, when you look at any decade, was Dan Marino a better quarterback than John Elway? Was Joe Montana a better quarterback than Warren Moon? I mean, however you want to decide it is up to you. But I think it's okay to have a tent where there's a select few number of great quarterbacks who've all had great careers. And so I think that Mahomes will have a great career. The other two guys will too.
I'll say this to your point. No, they weren't getting on Tom Brady 4 or 5 years in, but I think that is an important distinction. Part of it was he was ticking off championships. He won championships in years 2, 3, 4, and 5 of his career. He wasn't putting up the statistical numbers that Patrick Mahomes has done. That's the difference. Is
but the game is different though too.
The game is different, but even for what is happening in the game today, I'm not just comparing Mahomes to Brady. I'm comparing Mahomes to his contemporaries. He's doing things that no one else in the game right now is doing, statistically speaking. He's had 2 5,000-yard seasons in 5 years. So with another 4,900-yard one, multiple 3 40-plus touchdown seasons with the 50. Statistically, he's doing things that Tom Brady wasn't doing. And now if he wins this, He's pretty damn close to doing what he did championship-wise, right? Because he'll have 2 with a Super Bowl loss if he can win this against the Eagles.
He's a ways away.
Not from where Tom Brady was at this point in his career.
Yeah, Tom had 3 and went 3 for 3.
Yeah, and Mahomes will have 2 championships and a runner-up. What do you think?
Runner-ups don't count.
Years behind?
Runner-ups don't count.
Can we pause though? Let's re-rack this question, okay? Yeah. So I think that the question we have to ask is, yeah, he's probably not at Brady level yet. Brady won 3 Super Bowls in 4 years. He didn't make the playoffs in the 4th year. Mahomes has hosted 5 AFC Championship games. He made 3 Super Bowls. Brady went on to not win a Super Bowl for 10 years after that. The question of whether Mahomes can,
he played in 2 if you're counting runner-ups.
Right. So the question of whether Mahomes can catch Brady, the answer is yes. I think it's an underdog. To your point, Jeff, I agree with you there. I guess I think what Soren's maybe pointing to though is there another quarterback that is anywhere close to Mahomes' level in the NFL right now? Like, the fact that we talk about Brady and Manning in the same conversation is warranted because Manning and Brady were in a similar cluster of goodness.
Hold on. Manning did not win a Super Bowl until his 9th year. And so he hadn't even been to it. Hadn't even been to it until year 9.
All to my point. Who is Patrick Mahomes' Brady or Manning, depending upon which guy we'll give him? Like who's the quarterback 1B right now?
I'd say it's Joe Burrow.
And I think
talking about young guys or guys like Aaron Rodgers or Tom Brady who are still playing.
I'm talking about like his contemporary. Yeah, Rodgers and Brady are the era before Mahomes, even though they've intersected, of course, the same way. But
I think a better way to look at this is, it's an NBA comparison. It's LeBron James. LeBron James is going to go down as arguably the greatest player ever, right? Unless you're a Michael Jordan guy. It's okay to be Kevin Durant. It's okay to be Steph Curry. It doesn't mean you're any less of a player.
Hang on, but why, if it's NBA, why is it? Because this was brought up, and I've said this on the radio. Why isn't it Bill Russell? Like, why is it the
conversation too? We're talking about just guys right now. I mean, if you want to talk about the whole NBA,
but my point when you said runner-ups don't count, and if Patrick Mahomes would have 2, and I'm like, he'd have 2, and he played for a 3rd with a team that was banged up and didn't get it done, and lost to Brady, which is significant, but. And comparing them to say like they're not even close, I think is foolhardily, unless you're going to tell me Bill Russell's the greatest player of all time. He has by far the most championships.
I would bring up Troy Aikman. Troy Aikman had 3 championships in his first 6 years,
and he was not the best player.
But he's not Troy Aikman as far as winning championships yet. If we're just talking about winning championships,
no, we're talking about but we're talking about best players, right? And you discounted Mahomes that if he beat the Eagles, he would have 2 championships and a runner-up, and you're like, runner-up doesn't count. He's a long way away from Brady. I do not think he's a long way away from Brady.
I think he's a long way from Brady in terms. Okay, what's the overall point you're making? That Patrick Mahomes is going to be the greatest quarterback ever?
That
he's on that pace to do that?
But that comparing Patrick Mahomes to Tom Brady is real. It's relevant. It's fair. It's an honest.
In what capacity?
Legacy.
I mean, I think there's a huge difference here in the sense that in every comparison we've had of quarterbacks in the NFL, there's a guy that is a champion, a winner, and then there's a guy who's amazing statistically and not quite a winner yet, right? So in the past, you had Montana and you had Marino, right? And Marino had all the stats and all the brilliance, and Montana was also brilliant, but was not quite as good. And had the championships. In the 90s, you had Steve Young, who was brilliant and had all the statistics, right? He led the league in either passer rating or passing yards every year for 6 straight years. And you had Troy Aikman, who won the championships. In the 2000s, you had Brady, who was, won the championships, and you had Peyton Manning, who was brilliant and didn't have the championships. Mahomes is both. That's the thing. And Mahomes is making Super Bowls and winning Super Bowls. And you look at every chart, that's statistics. Patrick Mahomes is in the upper right corner of every chart. He's Marino, and like again,
nobody's arguing that. But nobody's arguing that.
But
nobody's arguing that
like,
Patrick Mahomes is the best player in the game right now. Nobody's arguing that he has had the fastest start.
But Eric is saying he belongs in the discussion. Like, if you're to compare Brady where he was at this stage of his career, the same stage as Mahomes, that is a real comparison. And there is a real argument to be made that Mahomes is better.
I would tell you this, that whenever Mahomes' career ends, Tom Brady will be the best quarterback in NFL history. That's the point I'm making. And I don't discount what Patrick has done. It's amazing what he's done. It's spectacular what he's done. To me, it's not an argument worth having because there's no way to really quantify it, right? Yeah, I grant you, he's had better numbers, but he's playing in a time in the NFL where defenses can't take receivers' head off anymore. They can't hit the quarterback. Like, you're going to have better numbers.
I think I would amend your statement to say, with the exception, championships are considered the most important thing, and you can quantify that, and Brady wins that. Every other thing you would use to quantify it, Patrick Mahomes wins. Everything. I
would agree. He's more talented than Brady's ever been. He has done more than Brady's ever been.
I just think
all I'm saying is, I don't think, and let's not give him the championship just yet. I'm just saying 2 championships. I think if you're talking about winning, being a winner, being the greatest quarterback, I think you have to win the championships first. So I think it puts, to me, if he wins this championship, now he's at the level of, as far as winning, of Ben Roethlisberger, of Eli Manning. If he wins 3, now he's there with Troy Aikman and whoever else won 3. Who else is it? Staubach or
my head's going to explode if Troy Aikman's name gets uttered yet again.
I'm just saying there is, to me, a difference in saying, "Oh, look out, Tom Brady, here he comes." I think he's going to have a phenomenal career. I think what Brady has done in terms of his numbers and his championships, he is so far removed from anybody touching him that it's hard for me to sit here and say, as great as Patrick Mahomes is, that he's going to surpass him.
No one's asking you to say it. We're comparing the times right now. Eric, real quick, let's close this section and go. What do you want to say?
No, I think Jeff's right that, like, Mahomes is an underdog to catch Brady. I think that the difference is that when we talk about winning, we're throwing guys in there who weren't the best quarterbacks in the NFL at the time. Eli, Aikman, guys like that who won championships, and they don't belong in the conversation with Mahomes because Mahomes has the Steve Young numbers, the Peyton Manning numbers, and also tucked rings and hopefully another ring before any of those. He's the best of both worlds. That's the point. He wins and he's amazing statistically. And at this stage in his career, it's unprecedented. I think the point is, at this stage in his career, we have not seen somebody who pulled up statistics like he did and also won at the Troy Aikman clip, right? Even though Aikman, of course, was not as good. Like that's the whole point. And that's why I think Mahomes transcends the argument, because Aikman needed an absolute wagon of a team to win those Super Bowls, while Steve Young didn't have it at the time. And Mahomes,
so if he loses, what happens to that argument?
He's further back.
He's a bigger winner than Peyton Manning. That's I think the answer is he's Manning with a ring. He's Marino with a ring. He's Steve Young. Steve Young's a top 10 quarterback in the NFL, but he's not Brady, and I don't think he'll ever be Brady, because 7 Super Bowls is freaking unbelievable.
I guess I've never seen any of this stuff as a horse race, and that's what it feels like. We're trying to turn it into a horse race when, to me, it's different guys, different circumstances doing great things.
Yeah, well, it's what sports is. It's comparisons. The Red, Gold, and Bold podcast is proudly brought to you by Gann Asphalt and Concrete, proudly serving the greater Kansas City area, including Overland Park, Olathe, Independence, Lee Summit, Shawnee, wherever you are. Gann Asphalt and Concrete, Kansas City's nationally recognized full-service paving and pavement maintenance contractor, making parking lot problems disappear. They've been doing it here in Kansas City since 1994. Free consultations, yes. No commissions, in-house crews. Every project comes with a written warranty. Find them online at GannAsphalt.com or call 816-484-3338. Gann Asphalt and Concrete, one contractor, all things parking lots. Tell them you heard about it here on the Red, Gold, and Bold podcast. Chris Jones, best performance ever for Chris Jones. What did you think of that, and where would you put what he did in that game, Jeff?
Since he never had a sack before in the playoffs, I think it's number one with a bullet. I think he dominated. He probably earned himself another $10, $20 million off of it. Now, again, it's backup lineman, but Chris Jones had to go out there and make them look like backup linemen. He did that from the first snap. He did it at critical junctures. I would almost suspect that if he doesn't get that sack late in the game on that last drive the Bengals have, that they're able to make some plays and get in the field goal position. So obviously that was super timely. And, I think they put up a lot of sacks this year. I would probably argue that Chris Jones, even with the sacks he didn't get, was probably responsible for at least half of those, maybe 60%, just flushing guys to other dudes, the way he pressured the quarterback. And so, hats off to him. He spent the entire year thinking about that moment. And he's had some games where he's disappeared, but, that was the best that he's ever played, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, the backup lineman is real, but I don't remember anybody dinging Aaron Donald for kicking Cam Irving's ass all over the field on that Monday night game, the 54-51 game with the Rams. I mean, that's what you do. You put your best on their worst, and you try to exploit it. And the fact that he can rush now from the inside and outside, Eric, he's rushing on tackles, he's rushing on guards, showed his versatility as well. And I think Jeff's point's absolutely right on. You see some of them. I saw a breakdown. Dan Orlovsky had a breakdown today about how Chris Jones drawing the double team gave everybody one-on-one to work with. I mean, he is the engine that makes it go.
Yeah, and we've wanted Chris Jones to be that force multiplier forever, right? And he's a very good individual player. And on Sunday, he transcended the entire environment, right? He was the entire Chiefs defense, and they expect him to be that. When you go to a Chiefs game at Arrowhead and they announce their defense, they go out of order to announce Chris Jones last because he's the superstar in that defense. And he makes Frank Clark better. He made Michael Dana, George Karlaftis better. I think that what Chiefs fans want is a little bit more consistency and for him to show up in big games. But, if this is the player that they're going to get, then they should sign him to an extension. Obviously I think that the issue is going to be, can you count on him to do this for 3-4 more years? I think that's an open question. But on Sunday, I mean, he was the best player on the field, and that includes the quarterback for the Chiefs. Like, he was the best player on the field, and he absolutely dominated in the big spots. And, that sack against Burrow on third down in the final minute of the game was, that's legendary. I mean, the Chiefs fans will never forget that sack.
Yeah, a couple of people asking about, do you give him a third contract? And I think that's a big question. One we'll spend more time on in the offseason because we've got plenty of topics to talk about here. But I think it definitely opened the door more. Jeff said it made him 10, 15, 20 million. I do think it made the decision a lot harder. Like, if the idea was, okay, we got to turn and burn him for draft picks the same way we did Tyreek Hill. We've talked about it all year. It's different in the sense that he's kind of the Mahomes of the defense, like we're talking about now. Everything seems to come off of him. So I don't think it's as easy a decision to move on from him. And I think he made it harder. And defensive lineman Fletcher Cox is playing at a very high level for the Eagles. He's 32 years old. This is a spot where you can play, particularly if you play on the inside longer. It's a spot that ages. Old man strength starts to help out for interior defensive linemen. So I think it is a tricky question and one we'll get more into. Jeff, with Chris Jones playing that way, we'll get to the injury of L'Jarius Sneed here in a minute, but are you trusting this defense? Can the Chiefs trust this defense to keep the Eagles down under 27, 24 points in that range?
That's a different kind of challenge that you're talking about. But yeah, I mean, I think what I trust more. I mean, the rookies play well, all that. I trust that Spags will adjust to what he's dealt with. We can sit here and talk about how great the corners played. End of the day, they were doubling T. Higgins and Jamar Chase for most of that game once Tyler Boyd went out. And to me, that said, Steve Spagnuolo has learned a valuable lesson here that when you got a chance to let your front hunt, let them hunt, and then take away everybody else. Yep. They were able to sometimes double three guys. And so that's what really made it harder for Joe Burrow. And he got off this kick of, let's bring pressure, let's leave our corners on islands. Like he just said, and Chase made a great play, on the 4th and 6th play They tried to get to Higgins. It didn't work out for them. But he realized that, okay, I lost my best corner, L'Jarius Sneed. I got to play McDuffie in the slot. He didn't look comfortable there. But, I'm going to do some things that help these guys out. And so for me, as much as I give credit to the younger guys for stepping up and making the plays in that game and what Chris Jones did, I think what Spagnuolo did was really, really smart, which was to bet on, okay, my defensive line should dominate this offensive line. And that should be what it is. And he did that.
And I guess the question would have to be asked, did he finally get to that, or did he finally have a defensive line that allowed him to do that, right? Like they're
not to get the circumstance.
Yeah. Well, against the backups, but listen, they've been, we've gone over 5.5 sacks in the last 7 regular season games for Karlaftis. Michael Dana emerged. A number of people have brought up how good he was. One of the Frank Clark sacks was really Michael Dana's sack that Frank Clark then mopped up, which you got to be there to do it. I'm not trying to ding Frank Clark. He's playing better football right now. To play it that way, you got to get pressure. They're getting pressure. Eric, do you trust the defense now? And do you think that they can be trusted to really create some problems for the Eagles?
I trusted the defense the whole time. All season, I trusted the defense. Look, playing McDuffie and nickel in like regular season games, we're kind of like, hey, what were you doing? Why is L'Jarius Sneed tracking DK Metcalf? That like prepared, there are things that this team has done to be resilient to changes. The Eagles offense is a very good offense at what we know. And what I mean by that is the best team that this team has beaten this year is the Detroit Lions, when Jalen Hurts has been the quarterback. And that doesn't mean they suck. That doesn't mean they're not very good. All that is to say is there's a lot of game script that we have not seen the Eagles perform well in yet. Not that we've seen them perform poorly, but we have not seen. The Washington Commanders game was the first game that they trailed in the second half. That was week 10. So they got all the way to week 10 without trailing in the second half of a game. They lost that game, right? They lost that game by multiple scores. They trailed the following week against Indianapolis for the entire game, and then they scored a touchdown to win it without the virtue of a completed pass by Jalen Hurts in the final drive.
We've got all next week to break down the Eagles. I mean,
but what I'm saying is, I think the Chiefs' defense.
You're not trusting the Chiefs if what you're going to do is sit and rip the Eagles.
No, what I'm saying is I'm saying the Chiefs might have. I'm saying the Chiefs might have an advantage here in ways that they had an advantage last week, which is the Eagles have 2 really good receivers, and the Chiefs have a secondary that can cover 2 really good receivers, evidently. And that to me means that I trust them.
Let's not. Did you hear what I just said about the doubling of Higgins and Chase? You're not doubling those receivers with the Eagles' run game. They're going to put in some man coverage.
I mean, so we don't think that they're like the Chiefs' defense allowed 71 yards rushing to the Bengals. Like the thing
Eagles'
about
run game is not the Bengals.
It's not because they run Jalen Hurts and Jalen Hurts is hurt and hasn't run the way he was running in the first part of the year. I'm with you. I do think the Eagles, I won't disagree, Jeff. I guess maybe I would wish you would soften the statement just a little bit, right? I think your statement is accurate.
Guys,
but
what happens?
Not quite so demonstrative. The Eagles are tougher. I agree with you that the Eagles, stopping the Eagles will be tougher.
We've been begging this defense to tackle all year. And was there a missed tackle in the open field?
I mean, Eric, come on. You were the one who was, when you were ripping the Bengals apart to predict 36-13 Chiefs, one of the things you pointed out was they hadn't run the ball worth a snot for 5 weeks. That was one of the things am I the only one that listens to what comes out of our mouths here on this thing? That was your pitch. So when Jeff goes, it's going to be harder to stop the Eagles run game. All you need to do is go,
it will be harder, but do we not? So what I started talking about before you told me to shut up was we know that they're going to be able to run the ball as much as they have when they've beaten a crappy Giants team and a 49ers team that had Josh Johnson playing quarterback and then had Brock Purdy who, without an arm. Because the thing is, again, what I'm trying to say is this Eagles team runs the ball really effectively, against a less than stellar schedule, and B, from ahead, right? So what happens if the Kansas City Chiefs are on par with the Eagles, right? This will be one of the few teams that the Eagles have faced this year where the other team is as good as they are. And I'm going to throw that out there. They're as good as the Eagles. So what happens if this game is 7-0 Chiefs in the first quarter or 14-3 Chiefs in the second quarter, and they force Jalen Hurts to throw the football because running the football is not conducive to coming back? We've seen the Eagles in very few instances have to run an offense with a pass-first bend, and they have struggled doing so. So that's they don't just get to run the ball on the Chiefs when they're behind by 11. They don't just get to run the ball on the Chiefs when they're behind in the third quarter. So I think that all it takes for the Chiefs don't have to be consistently amazing stopping the run on next Sunday. What they need to do is stop the run a few times so that they can get a lead. And I think that they're more than capable of doing that.
Okay, so Eric is trusting the defense. We can put that.
It's like, let me get out of this. I'm in this black hole. Why do you just? Where's the door out of this room? This breakout room.
Where
Eric apparently doesn't realize we have 3 more shows. At this point, 2 deep will do tomorrow. It's all Chiefs and Eagles tomorrow night too. Yeah. And Eric's so fired up.
We can talk about Sean Payton tomorrow.
He's emptying the clip right now, right? No, here it is. And he's got a banana clip taped together where he can just turn around and pop it in the other way quick and keep firing right now.
Ren, you act like I haven't covered the last N Super Bowls. And dude. Well, I'll be talking player props tomorrow. Jalen Hurts under. Look, this is a long 2 weeks. Embrace it. We'll have plenty to talk about.
I'm not worried about running out of things to talk about. I'm worried. That's not it. We have lots of topics that we're not going to get to tonight. We do have plenty to talk.
Eric, we know you're picking the Chiefs. You don't have to surprise us now.
I didn't even say I was. Did I not? I said the Eagles. I'm okay with them being favored. I have not told a single person to bet the Chiefs in this game. I told somebody to bet the under. All this stuff. If you watch my text,
I'll tell you to bet the Chiefs. I'm all over the Chiefs.
My text history.
Everybody can run and hide right now.
My text history last week was a string of Chiefs, Chiefs, Chiefs. I texted one of my friends, Ben Brown, who I think listens to the show. Chiefs plus 125. Chiefs. That's all I said all last week. I will not be doing similar things this week. I respect the Eagles relative to the Chiefs immensely. Okay.
Let's get to Brett Veach. When all you national poobahs, Jeff, get down to Phoenix, and you get a zero in on just the 2 teams, because there is stuff there's stuff like the Broncos getting Sean Payton and all that. There's other news. A lot of that'll quiet down. The NFL mandates it for the most part so that everybody can focus on it. Brett Veach was going to get a light shined on him. This was Brett Veach's game, was it not? And 5 rookies contributing heavily. They had 10 rookies play. That's a team record. They had 8 rookies play on defense. That's also a team record. 5 of them playing a lot of minutes on defense, or a lot of snaps on defense. On offense, Isaiah Pacheco contributing, and then we can go back over the last 2 or 3. MarquezValdes-Scantling coming forward. This was his day, and he's gonna. While he's been mentioned in the past, kind of as the guy who scouted Patrick Mahomes, is this going to be the one that exposes him as? Yeah, guess what? He's a really good all-around NFL executive as well.
I think that. Yeah, I mean. I think he is. I think he's respected for what he's done. He's not. I think he doesn't get the kind of notoriety you're talking about because this league has changed so much in terms of GMs being hyper aggressive, and so he made a lot of moves when he got the job and Patrick became the quarterback. The Frank Clark and Sammy Watkins stuff, Matthew coming in, but I think I think he doesn't get the notoriety because you look at what Howie Roseman's done in Philadelphia, where, you trade Carson Wentz, number 2 overall pick, you bring in Jalen Hurts, you're making all these wild trades and signing all these big name guys. Les Snead last year, trading for Matthew Stafford, getting rid of Jared Goff, trading for Von Miller, Odell Beckham, big name guys, the Niners with their moves for Trey Lance and McCaffrey. He's not making those kinds of moves. And so we are always kind of in the national media consumed by that stuff. He hasn't had to make those moves because, one, financially, they're trying to obviously deal with Patrick's inflated, making more money now. But I think that the drafting he's done this year you'd have to say he's had the best draft class. Maybe I'm trying to think of who was it? There was another team in there who was playing pretty well that it's escapes me now, but there was another team that did well. But what he got out of those guys, most of whom were not the big name picks. I mean, really, the guys at the bottom of the draft in the mid round were the guys who really stood out. From the Jalen Watsons to what Josh Williams has done. I'm trying to think of who in the middle I'm thinking of. Who was the guy? Oh, Pacheco. And so he trusted his instincts on this. And I think he did something that smart general managers do, which he recognized, hey, look, we lost 2 years ago to Tampa. We didn't get there last year. Our quarterback's more expensive. We're not the same team we were in 18 and 19 when we were lights out, just steamrolling people. We got to be more balanced. We have to be faster. We have to shake this up a little bit. And so I look at what they've gotten for the guys they've got, these younger guys who came in there. They've all filled a purpose. And even MBS delivered, on Sunday. And so, yeah, I think certainly he's going to get a lot more love because of all that.
Eric, is this the time that, this game put him front and center and he's going to take the victory lap the week in Arizona? Not literally, but with the media, talking about that and seeing how when they start digging in, because I know a lot of guys cover nationally, you can only go, an inch deep and 100 miles wide. Now they're going to start digging down, a mile deep, and an inch wide on both of these teams. And they're going to look around and they're going to go, good Lord, there's a lot of rookies that are on this team. And they're going to look at, there's only 16 guys that are going for a second ring, right? One of them is Austin Ryder, who's on the practice squad. Marcus Kemp was on the practice squad. There's 16 guys. So the turnover on this, which is normal for the NFL, right? That's how it turns over. But a lot of times if you see this, it's a window that's closing and it's a guy that's hung on to this group. And, they're about ready to crash like the Rams crashed last year. This isn't a team that's about to crash. They're in a pretty good position.
The turnover is average over a 4 year span. But if you consider the fact that they kind of ran it back in 20 and then tried to kind of run it back a little in 21, this 1 year change in the roster. I mean, we talk about Tyreek Hill all the time, and we should, because he's a great player. And they didn't just replace him with vibes. They replaced him with a receiving core that kind of was complete in a weird way. But also Tyrann Mathieu was voted team MVP in 2019, and they let him walk this offseason and replaced him with Justin Reed, who was less expensive, and Brian Cook, and they gave Juan Thornhill more responsibility. And so there were decisions that were difficult.
Can we mention Charvarius Ward started the NFC Championship game, graded very well this year for the 49ers. He was allowed to walk as well. It wasn't just Tyreek Hill, to your point.
Yeah, exactly. And there was a lot of tough decisions. And obviously with Veach and Tillis and Borgazzi, all those guys deserve a ton of credit. I will say they also will probably point out that the coaching staff deserves a great deal of credit here as well, because Steve Spagnuolo is a guy who went out of his comfort zone to play a lot of rookies, most of the season. And, Andy Reid, and the phrase that I heard when I was talking to somebody this week was Andy Reid kept telling these guys they belong in the NFL. And that's a tough message when you put, Josh Williams is drafted fourth round. He loses a job to Jalen Watson in training camp as seventh rounders playing over him. And then Joshua Williams overtakes, and then Jalen Watson overtakes. And to keep those guys engaged and to give them the reps so that when we get to January football, it's not as bad as it would be for another team. That's obviously the front office, but the coaching staff also buying into the front office's vision for this football team. They were again, we've said a lot about MVS this year, but throwing the ball to MVS 7 times in the Denver game, even though it didn't work, right? That when they actually have to count on him to be the main guy Sunday, I think that counts a little bit, right? In terms of keeping a guy engaged and making sure that he knows he's a part of the team and he's believed in. And there's tough. That's tough because some guys truly can't hack it, right? So when do you make the decision to move on? I think that all of those things, the front office deserves a ton of credit, and I think the coaching staff, in conjunction with them, deserves a lot of credit as well.
Yeah, no doubt. Let's also point out that they lost both their tackles to injuries when they thought they were going to have them for 2 or 3 more
for
years.
a while.
Boom, they were done. Like in 1 year, he lost both tackles, and they've managed to overcome that. I mean, I know Orlando Brown is a lightning rod, but that not a bad fix when Eric Fisher pops an Achilles tendon and Mitchell Schwartz decides I'm not, the back is too much, I'm out. That was unforeseen, and they've dealt with that. Those are 2 big important positions, and they've dealt with that. Along the way when you go back to all the other things that they've lost in just this past year. Let's finish with this. I do want to touch on the officiating a little bit more, Jeff. It's become a big thing. In this game, do you have any problem with the officiating in this game overall? Maybe it's too many Corona premieres and my team won. For me, I thought it was fairly well officiated game. I guess I'm missing what the hubbub is.
Well, look, how I feel about this stuff. Like, I always feel like officiating only matters when it affects your team's winning. So it's amazing. I was surprised when I turned on the TV on Monday morning and saw some of the outrage or heard about it. I'm not on Twitter that much, so I didn't know about all this stuff that was trending. I did, as I watched the game, I didn't feel like what the hell's going on out here. And I guess it's got to be super, super crazy stuff happening for me to get to a place where I'm like, I just feel like these things balance out over the course of a game, over the course of a year. The stuff that I saw people were focusing on, that stuff happens in every game. Sometimes it gets called, sometimes it doesn't. I didn't have a problem with the third down do-over, even because I think that it was the right call to make if the clock wasn't working. So obviously the offside play was a legit personal foul. So there wasn't, but again, I feel that way when Chiefs fans are complaining about Carl Cheffers. I just think it's very easy to turn this stuff into conspiracy, into easy explanations for why your teams lose or win. But ultimately, games are decided by players. That game was decided by the players, and they could control what would happen on the field. The Chiefs made more plays. That's how it played out for me.
Eric, the officials, your thoughts on what we saw in that game?
I mean, the whole like giving the Chiefs an extra down. Now, I think it was less conspiratorial than the Bengals fans want to believe. I'd like to get to a time when we can discuss officiating errors, just like the Patrick Mahomes fumble and stuff like that. But I understand that officials are an easy target here, and the Chiefs did benefit from some calls. Frank Clark, I think, roughed Burrow on that one play. Everything else seemed on the level. I don't think there were not holds on that run by Mahomes, like as many offensive linemen would tell people. So I think the Bengals got a little. They got some bad calls, but I don't think it was material. To the game. This weekend or next weekend with Carl Cheffers, like the Chiefs are 12-4 with Cheffers, coaching their game. Like that's basically what their record is normally. So I don't see there being an issue, but it will be part of the discussion for sure.
I don't know what you two are talking about. Cheffers blows, and I think it's an abomination that he's doing a Super Bowl. I will let fly on that one. He drags the game. He ruins the game. He ruins the flow of the game. There are way too many calls. They make calls, and then they got to go discuss it. I mean, New York was clearly holding their hand in which game was it? Was it the Bengals-Bills game that he had? They were that is when he's in the Super Bowl, there's a problem. There is a problem because the games suck. It's flag after flag after flag after flag. It's then pick up a flag. Then no, we're gonna have a conversation. There was no flag. It's awful. It is awful. And I don't understand how a bunch of billionaires get their ass handed to them by a little bitty NFL referee union that seems to own them. Own them. It's shocking to me. Shocking. That's it. That's all I have on that.
Spoken like a itinerant gambler.
Yeah, I mean, and I do think that that's part of the equation. I think that's why you're hearing more about it now because
Oh yeah.
when you have your favorite team, you watch every play and it pisses you off. And then when you start betting, and I'm back betting again, when you start betting, you have 6 favorite teams that weekend. And it pisses you off when they blow calls. And you're watching every play and you're living and dying with every throw. And I think the country is going through that now. And I think the fan outrage is real. I do think that. Are there some fans that every call against their team, they lose their mind? Sure. But are there others that it's just like, so this is there's no consistency here. Why is that a hold and that's not a hold? Why is that a roughing and that's not a roughing? Why you threw the flag? Why isn't it a flag? It's just it has not gotten better. It has not gotten better. We can spend a whole.
There's 22 guys on the field. There's only 7 refs. It's hard to keep track of everything.
I also interesting discussion topic for the offseason, but I do think sports betting's role in this is different depending upon I think it's different, and it'll be interesting to see what they do as far as I think sports betting will have an influence on officiating in a good way soon, but right now I think all it's doing is creating some conspiracies that I don't think are warranted and honestly hurt the game a little bit.
I don't think there's conspiracies. I think there's idiots. And I think you got to call idiots idiots. I think you got to call stupid stupid. And I don't think the league will do it. That you cannot tell me that this is an industry that no one's ever deserved to be fired. My ass. It is Curtis Siebold called it. They're like Supreme Court justices. It's like a lifetime appointment. And that is ridiculous. There should be the bottom quarter of the league got to be fired every year. I mean, relegation. Back to the college ranks, boys. You're out. The best of the college ranks are coming up. That's what it ought to be every year. That's what I think. But anyway, just a point. All right, let's get out of here. We're going to do it again tomorrow. Our Too Deep NFL podcast, but the NFL is really about the Eagles and Chiefs right now, plus all the news. We'll get into Sean Payton. Tomorrow, we stream that live if you catch us on the podcast. That's Wednesdays at 9 p.m. Central. So I want to thank, first of all, Gann Asphalt and Concrete, our great sponsor. Kansas City's best. If you got any kind of parking lot problems, not anymore. Not if you call Gann Asphalt and Concrete. 816-484-3338. Find them online at GannAsphalt.com. Gann Asphalt and Concrete, one contractor, all things parking lots. Make sure you tell them you heard about them on the Red Gold and Bold podcast. For Jeff Chadiha from the NFL Network, Eric Eager, right about the Chiefs from Sumer Sports. My name is Soren Petro from Sports Radio 810 WHB. Thank you for joining us here on the Red Gold and Bold podcast.